Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go. Hey, Enchilada Nation, excited to have a conversation with you today. It's so interesting when you read a quote that just triggers something in your brain. It just sends you down this pathway of thinking about that specific quote or topic from a lot of different angles. One of my favorite things to do is my morning routine where I get the opportunity to really dive into my personal study. This happens more frequently for me the more I focus on learning for doing's sake, really picking the content that I'm studying based on what problems am I trying to solve, what skill set am I trying to improve. There's so much content out there to consume, so many books, so many podcasts, so many courses to go to. I want to challenge you to really start identifying for the next 30 days, focus on learning how to apply AI or increase ability to ask better questions. Identify what it is you want to learn and improve, and then identify resources to consume that are going to solve that problem. If you do that, these gems will rise to the surface in the context of it. There are times I'm reading through a blog or reading through a book, and it's like the words jump off the page at me. It's not the answer, but it's a piece to the puzzle. And it's so fun to have these little treasures be found and the way they piece together. I can read two separate books, maybe from my spiritual study in the morning versus my business study in the morning. Something clicks between the two of them that creates a new thought for me in a way that neither of those authors intended it for. But because I did the pre-work, it now becomes my brain, my subconscious, mixing and melding with the two authors that put those two separate thoughts together to create a third unique thought, which is exactly what I need in that moment. An example of this, I wanted to share with you a quote that jumped out for me from my morning study a couple of days ago. Billy Marcus, a software engineer, he said this: people are not rational. They are rationalizing. Once you understand this simple fact, all the oddest human behavior will suddenly make way more sense. The thing I loved about that is that very first part of the quote that he says, people are not rational. That makes perfect sense. I deal with people on a day-to-day basis, and people are not rational. In some ways, people are crazy. I can say that because I'm a person and I'm a crazy person. If he would have stopped there, that message would not necessarily have just resonated with me, but it's how he reframed behind it. He said, they're not rational, but they are rationalizing. They're in the process of rationalizing. They may be showing up irrational, but why? Why are they showing up irrational? It's not because they've chosen to be irrational. They don't label themselves as irrational, but the way they're showing up is how they're rationalizing something. And then he says, once you understand that simple fact, all the oddest human behavior will suddenly make way more sense. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it makes so much sense why they're acting that way, but what it does is it takes me from a process of labeling that person as irrational, uneducated. If I just look at them as acting irrational, I instantly want to label them as something different than me. And in my mind, if me being good makes them instantly bad, this idea of asking the question of what are they actually trying to rationalize? Their behavior, the way they're showing up is rationalizing something. If it's my job to control how I react and create a better path forward, it's my job to try to figure out what are they rationalizing and why are they showing up this way? So I often catch myself forming conclusions about people, labeling them the best way I know how to based on how they're showing up. But lately I've started to realize that maybe somehow how someone shows up isn't a reflection of who they are, but it's a reflection of what they know, not who they know. And I think that's a really powerful thought. They're showing up that way based on what they know, what their life experience has been, who their mentors have been, what education they've had, what environments. So if I can look at a problem more rational than someone else, it's not because I'm gifted or smarter than the person. So I've had different experiences that opened up that perspective for me. And so instead of me judging that person and mislabeling them, how can I offer help and help them know something new? I've got to, one, help them acknowledge that it is a perspective. It's not a fact. And then how can I ask good questions or introduce new information to change what they know? And once they know and learn something different, can they change their behavior? And I know that's a big task and sometimes you're not able to do it, but I think this process of just looking at people differently in these situations is important. When we see others through the lens of rationalizing rather than rational, it really changes everything from that perspective. It takes me from a place of judging to understanding and maybe being able to help push things forward. And obviously you can't step in every situation where someone's acting irrational, but within your world, within your reach, we absolutely can. So I like to start thinking rationalization is actually like reverse thinking, is looking historically. We're trying to rationalize and make sense of something that was. And right now, particularly, a lot of us are putting together our goals for the next year. And you have to understand history, what was, you have to rationalize what has happened to some extent. But if that becomes our focus of rationalizing and trying to make sense of what was, and that's the end of the conversation, then we're not able to grow moving forward. So the thought process I went through as I put together my notes and went through this was, how do you go from rationalizing behavior in the past? And you do need to rationalize and understand history, but then the power comes when you take that knowledge, that information, that rationalization, and you reframe how you think, how you act, the way you see the world. And that is where growth comes from and changes the future. Living in that place of rationalization, if you stay there, you stagnate your growth. You're not able to move forward. You have to get in there a little bit. You have to rationalize a little bit to learn and understand what's working, what's not working. But how do you reframe from there moving forward? And so as I went through this, ultimately there's 4 steps that you go through when you reframe something. Number 1 is awareness. So when something's coming up in your head, and a lot of times it's the voice inside of your head, you got to, number 1, be aware of when is it rationalizing your behavior to protect you. A great example of this, one of the things I'm really encouraging a lot of my clients and people I'm talking to right now is it takes almost twice as much activity from a lead generation standpoint to generate the same amount of sales it did a couple of years ago. People don't have time or energy or want to go lead generate more. And so instantly, instead of your brain, your subconscious saying, we got this, let's go make it happen, it starts to rationalize why you don't need to do that, why you're too busy to do that, why your people don't want to hear from you, all these things. So number 1 is being aware of when are you living in rationalization to the point that you're being irrational. Then you can move into understanding of saying, why am I thinking that way? Is it based out of fear or is it based on a limiting belief? My people don't want my services. Is it a belief or is it past experience? Step number 3 is where you actually can start to reframe it. So if you say, I recognize when I show up this way, I understand the basis of where that fear or belief is coming from, but how would I reword it to look at that through a new lens? How would I go from thinking through my people don't want to hear from me? How would I reframe that to it can solve a problem for these people different than anybody else that are waiting for my phone call? The activity to call them is the same, but reframing that process. And I will tell you, there's times that it feels disingenuous at first, but I very much believe in the principle of act as if it is true. And over time, it becomes true. You will find yourself over time picking up the phone quickly because you're like, I can't get to enough people. These people need my help, or whatever the issue is that you're reframing. Once you reframe and rethink through it, that's where the 4th step comes in, which is action. It always comes back to action. It does no good to become a phenomenal rationalizer and a phenomenal reframer if you end there. It has to be coupled up with action. Action is creating new behavior. Again, it might feel like an awkward, clunky, weird behavior at first because it's a new reframed thought. But after you reframe that belief system for a while, it actually becomes part of who you are. There's a couple challenges I have for you in this, and I wanted to give you an example. Number 1, have you identified what it is that you want to get out of your learning right now? Is it a new skill? Is it some additional knowledge? Is it a better understanding of something? There's a treasure to be had that is going to have the biggest impact on your goal. Identify what is the treasure? What is the missing link that I got to go get? Identify the learning sources that are focused on that. Pick a book, pick a podcast. Don't just jump on the next book, the next podcast. Think through which one will help solve this problem. Identify someone in your world that's doing that well. Take them to lunch. Ask them what they're doing. Be specific with them, the problem you're trying to solve. It blows me away how many times people ask me for coaching and help, but they haven't even identified the problem. We start the conversation with trying to really understand what is the problem we're trying to solve. Frankly, a lot of times the problem they tell me they're trying to solve is a down the road problem. We need to go all the way back to the root problem. The quicker we can get to that root problem, the better we can identify the resources that are available. We can get more learning. And again, those treasures will just start jumping off the page for you. Every morning, I make a list of just the little treasures that come to me and watch them come together and create a picture for me. So that's challenge number 1. And then challenge number 2 is from this exact quote that I shared with you this morning. People are not rational. They are rationalizing. So who in your world have you labeled as irrational, that's showing up in a way that maybe you're frustrated with or you dislike or you're judging them now. And then ask yourself the question, well, if they're showing up irrationally, what is it that they don't know? That's not who they are. The way they're acting is a result of what they know. So what don't they know and how do I close the gap? And then a deeper question on that too is, where are you showing up irrational? Where is someone else looking at you and being like, he is being irrational right now? And then you ask a question, well, if I'm showing up in a way that I don't want to show up, it's not who I am. What do I need to learn? And this goes back to the challenge number one, identifying what it is you need to learn to become the next evolution of you. This is part of the process of becoming the whole enchilada, becoming a balanced version of yourself, continuing to learn, continuing to identify that next stepping stone forward. And this is a lifelong journey. There is no end to it. There's never going to be the day where I pat myself on the back and say, Marcus, you did it. You finally became the perfect ideal version of you. Because the farther I get down the path, the more I learn about myself and the more I see these gaps of opportunity for me to learn. Find joy in the process because there's a lot of joy to be had in it. I appreciate you listening. Continue to send your questions and concerns to me. Reach out, let me know how I can help. And don't forget, go live life on your terms.